Welcome to lesson 057 of Online School of Entrepreneurship. I am Dr. Kirian Mfam. In today's lecture, we will dwell on the vocational foundation of entrepreneurship education. Upon completion of this lecture, our audience will be able to 1. Define vocational education. 2. State the goals of vocational education. 3. Explain the vocational principles of entrepreneurship education. And 4. Connect entrepreneurship education to vocational studies. Introduction. Entrepreneurship has emerged as a vocational activity involving the skill to create an economic venture and convert opportunities to economic value. That is, as a vocational activity, entrepreneurship is driven towards the inculcation of entrepreneurial skills to create economic value and to convert opportunities to solve problems of the society. This explains why entrepreneurship studies is now incorporated in the curriculum of colleges of education and universities, among other institutions offering business education program, because entrepreneurship is a vocation-oriented academic program. The concept and objectives of entrepreneurship education are firmly tied to vocation. Hence, they need to establish the vocational root of the concept entrepreneurship education. That is to say, you cannot discuss entrepreneurship education being a vocational activity without establishing its root on the principles and foundation of vocational education, which in itself is skill-based. A vocation is a calling. A calling is a natural endowment of skills, talents, attitudes, and behavior, which when harnessed lead to excellence in a unique work environment. Vocational education is education for survival skills. The focus of vocational education is to prepare students for gainful employment, either as self-employed people or people that will be employed for paid services based on the skills that they have acquired in school. Vocational education is designed mainly to lead learners to acquire the practical skills, know-how, and understanding necessary for employment in a particular occupation or trade or class of occupations or trades. American Vocational Association in 1954 explained that vocational education is education designed to develop skills, abilities, understandings, attitudes, work habits, and appreciations, encompassing knowledge and information needed by workers to enter and make progress in employment on a useful and productive basis. So there is no way you will look at vocational education without seeing the critical elements of skill building, skill development, abilities and understanding, attitudes, work habits that will prepare an individual to be self-reliant economically. American Vocational Association also noted that vocational education is an integral part of the total educational program and contributes towards the development of good citizens by developing their physical, social, civic, cultural, and economic competencies. So in addition to preparing students for vocation, vocational education also gives students the competencies for economic development so that they can contribute to national development. According to the National Policy on Education of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 6th edition, published in 2014, the goals of vocational education shall be 1. To provide trained manpower in the applied sciences technology, and business, particularly at craft, advanced craft, and technical levels. 2. Provide the technical knowledge and vocational skills necessary for agricultural, commercial, and economic development. And 3. Give training and impart the necessary skills to individuals who shall be self-reliant economically. That is why we are saying that vocational education is the foundation or the roof of entrepreneurship education. Because through entrepreneurship education, which is vocation inclined, students will be given the necessary skills to be self-reliant economically. Principles of vocational entrepreneurship education. Prosser and Quigley in 1949 developed and popularized 16 theories or principles as minimum benchmarks for the successful implementation of any vocational education program, such as entrepreneurship education. When applied to entrepreneurship education program, the principles are: 1. Entrepreneurship education will be efficient in proportion as the environment in which the learner is trained is a replica of the environment in which he must subsequently conduct businesses. This principle is environment oriented, that the environment in which we train students on how to get vocational competencies as it relates to entrepreneurship, that environment should be the same environment in the larger society where students will go and practice entrepreneurship. That there must be a semblance, a connection between the environment in which students are taught entrepreneurship education and the environment where students will eventually go and practice entrepreneurship. 2. Effective entrepreneurial training can only be given where the training jobs are carried on in the same way, with the same operations, the same tools, and the same machines as in the entrepreneurial occupation itself. The emphasis here is that the skills, the tools, the approaches we use to train students on vocational entrepreneurship education should be the same tools, the same skills that are required in practicing entrepreneurship. 3. Entrepreneurship education will be effective in proportion as it trains the individual directly and specifically in the thinking and manipulative habits required in entrepreneurship. Here, students should be taught the desired skills to think creatively, to think innovatively, and to learn manipulative skills that will enable them function as entrepreneurs in the society. 4. Entrepreneurship education will be effective in proportion as it enables each individual to capitalize his interest, aptitudes, and intrinsic intelligence in the learning process to the highest possible degree. The focus of entrepreneurship education based on this principle is that it must be driven by the interest of the learner, the attitude of the learner, and the intrinsic intelligence the learner possesses in the learning process, so that he or she can maximize the essence of entrepreneurship studies. 5. Effective entrepreneurship education for any profession, calling, trade, occupation, or job can only be given to the selected group of individuals who need it, who wants it, and are able to profit by it. That means the foundation for which students should learn entrepreneurship should be on the basis of their need for entrepreneurial studies, for the want of entrepreneurial studies, and for the fact that at the end they are going to benefit from studying entrepreneurship. 6. Entrepreneurial training will be effective in proportion as the specific training experiences for forming right habits of doing and thinking are repeated to the point the habits developed are those of the finished skills necessary for gainful entrepreneurial employment. In this principle, the emphasis here is that learning should be reinforced. Skill building should be reinforced to the extent that actual learning has taken place before there will be a progress to the next level of learning and teaching. 7. Entrepreneurship education will be effective in proportion as the instructor has had successful experience in the application of skills and knowledge to the operation and processes he undertakes to teach. In this principle 7, rather, the emphasis is on the experience of the teacher who is teaching entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship as a course in tertiary institutions should not just be taught by any person, but by lecturers who have practical business experiences, so that they can transfer the knowledge they have gained in their respective business experiences to the teaching of entrepreneurship. 8. For every occupation, there is a minimum of productive ability which an individual must possess in order to secure or retain employment in that occupation. If entrepreneurship education is not carried to that point with that individual, it is neither personally or socially effective. In this principle 8, the emphasis is that as a vocational education program, entrepreneurial studies is expensive, and therefore there will be minimum level of productive ability that must be given to the students. Otherwise, it will not be necessary to embark on entrepreneurial studies at all. 9. Entrepreneurship education must recognize conditions as they are and must train individuals to meet the demands of the market, even though it may be true that more efficient ways of conducting the occupation may be known and that better working conditions are highly desirable. This principle is emphasizing the need to recognize the environment where entrepreneurs will go and practice the studies that they have gained in school. 10. The effective establishment of process habits in any learner will be secured in proportion as the entrepreneurship training is given on actual business setup and not on exercises or pseudo jobs. This principle emphasizing teaching entrepreneurship through entrepreneurship. That is on-hand learning. Students should be taught entrepreneurship by using practical business approach, so that the entrepreneurial activities will be demonstrated by learning by doing. 11. The only reliable source of content for specific entrepreneurship training is in the experience of entrepreneurs. What we are saying in this principle is that those that are competent to develop the content of entrepreneurship program are those that have experience in practical business. 12. For every occupation, there is a body of content which is peculiar to that occupation and to which has practically no functional value in any other occupation. The emphasis here is that the principles of entrepreneurship education must be unique to entrepreneurship, so that these principles can be translated into the practice of entrepreneurship. 13. Entrepreneurship education will render efficient social service in proportion as it meets the specific training needs of any group at the time that they need it, and in such a way that they can most effectively profit by the instruction. 14. Entrepreneurship education will be socially efficient in proportion as in its method of instruction and its personal relations with learners. It takes into consideration the particular characteristics of any particular group which it serves. Emphasis here in principle 14 is that the methods we use to teach entrepreneurship should be practice oriented. 15. The administration of entrepreneurship education will be efficient in proportion as it is elastic and fluid rather than rigid and standardized. What we are saying in this principle is that what we teach students on entrepreneurship should be flexible and not static, so that new contents, new developments in the society can be incorporated into the learning content. 16. While every reasonable effort should be made to reduce per capita cost, there is a minimum below which effective entrepreneurship education cannot be given. And if the cost does not permit this minimum per capita cost, entrepreneurship education should not be attempted. Here, we are being warned that entrepreneurship education, being a vocational education program, is expensive, and therefore effective financial resources have to be made available to fully implement the program of entrepreneurship studies. In all, this set of principles should serve as guidelines for the design, development, and implementation of vocational entrepreneurship education. Common features of vocational entrepreneurship education. The following are the key characteristics that distinguish vocational entrepreneurship education from entrepreneurship studies program. 1. It is competency based. 2. It is venture oriented. 3. It maximizes the learner. 4. It is need based. 5. It is practice oriented. 6. It is capital intensive. 7. It is employment based. 8. It encourages creativity and innovation. And 9. It harnesses local resources. In the course of this lecture, and in line with our instructional objectives, we were able to 1. Define vocational education. 2. State the goals of vocational education. 3. Explain the vocational principles of entrepreneurship education. And 4. Connect entrepreneurship education to vocational studies. Please support us by 1. Following us on our Facebook page, Online School of Entrepreneurship. 2. Subscribing to our YouTube channel, Entrepreneurship Teacher. And 3. Liking, commenting, and sharing our posts. Thank you, and see you in our next lecture.